You know, life is a peculiar thing. We come into this world crying naked and confused, and almost immediately the adults around us begin the great game of telling us who we are. They give us names, numbers, labels, and all the while the universe, vast and unbounded, watches through our eyes and smiles at the play. For before the first word was spoken, before the first thought divided this from that, you were already whole. You were already the movement of the cosmos, dancing in human form, pretending for a moment to be a somebody. But then, the story begins. You are taught that you are a person, a personality, a solid little creature among billions of others. You learn that there are things to chase and things to avoid, things to love and things to fear. You learn the game of getting somewhere, and you try very hard to win it, not realizing that no one told you what the prize actually is. So you run, and perhaps for a long while you succeed. You build your name, your possessions, your hopes for tomorrow. And yet, late at night, when the noise settles and the heart is alone, something begins to whisper, something soft, ancient, and unrelenting. It asks, is this all? That question, quiet as it may be, is the first trembling of awakening. For most of us, life goes on like a dream. We are swept along by events as waves are swept by the tide. We mistake movement for progress and noise for meaning. But then, in some mysterious way, the curtain trembles. Maybe through suffering, maybe through wonder, maybe simply through boredom, we begin to sense that the story we've been told isn't the whole story. The mask begins to itch, and we realize we are playing a part in a play whose script we never wrote. And so begins the search. The restless heart turns outward and inward at once. We read books, sit in temples, listen to teachers. We climb mountains and crawl through our own thoughts, hoping to find something solid beneath the shifting sands. We call it truth or God or enlightenment or peace. But the strange thing is that the harder we look, the more elusive it becomes, like trying to hold the wind in your hands. Because the seeker, you see, is part of the illusion. The one who searches for reality is the very veil that hides it. You may find yourself frustrated. You may sit in meditation and wonder why the thoughts won't stop, why the peace won't stay. You may feel as if you're chasing your own tail, and in a way, you are. The mind that tries to awaken is like a thief dressing as a policeman to catch himself. But this too is part of the dance. Every disappointment, every failure, every moment of emptiness is a step toward the realization that what you seek cannot be found because it was never lost. At some point, the whole structure begins to crack. The ambitions that once drove you lose their flavor. The promises of tomorrow begin to sound hollow. You start to see through the glittering surface of things, and you realize that much of what we call life is a kind of collective hypnosis, a trance sustained by fear and desire. And when that realization dawns, there is often great sorrow. The world seems meaningless, and you feel as though the ground has been pulled from beneath your feet. But that emptiness is not the end. It is the womb of a deeper knowing. You see, the universe has a curious way of teaching. It gives you everything you think you want until you realize that wanting itself is the problem. It lets you build castles in the sand until the tide comes in and shows you what was real all along. This moment of despair, this dark night of the soul, is not a punishment. It is grace wearing the mask of loss. For only when the false dies can the true be born. And so you surrender, not as a choice, but as a kind of collapse. The hands that clutched at life so desperately simply fall open. You stop trying to fix what was never broken. You stop trying to control what was never separate. And in that surrender, in that moment when you finally say, I don't know, something vast and silent begins to reveal itself. It's a strange feeling, almost like falling backwards into infinite space, yet realizing that you've been held all along. The heart softens. The edges of fear begin to dissolve. You start to notice that everything is happening by itself, the breath, the thoughts, the rising and falling of sensations. There is no door, no controller, only the spontaneous unfolding of what is. The river flows, and you are the river. The wind blows, and you are the wind. And then, perhaps one day while sitting quietly or walking in the sun, it happens. The veil thins to transparency. The sense of I and world, of watcher and watched, simply drops away. For a timeless instant there is only this pure awareness, boundless and ungraspable. You cannot say where you end and the sky begins. You cannot say where the sound of a bird becomes the hearing of it. Everything is woven together in a single, seamless presence. It is not a vision or a trance. It is the most ordinary thing in the world, seen without the filter of separation. You realize that the awakening you sought was never a new state to achieve, but the recognition of what has always been. It's like suddenly noticing the hum of a refrigerator that's been running all along. It was there, but you were too busy listening to your thoughts to hear it. And now that you've noticed, you can't unhear it. The hum of existence vibrates through every experience. Joy and sorrow, birth and death, gain and loss. But the story doesn't end there, for a glimpse is not yet integration. The ego, that old actor, is clever and persistent. It creeps back in and says, I have had an awakening. I am now a spiritual person. And just like that, the game begins anew. Yet something has changed. The illusion can no longer fully convince you. You know, somewhere deep, that all of this is a dream. And knowing that, you begin to play it differently. More lightly, more lovingly, with laughter in your eyes. You start to see the divine not only in meditation halls or mountain sunsets, but in traffic lights, in dirty dishes, in the laughter of children and the tears of strangers. You find that there is nowhere the universe is not. Every sound, every smell, every fleeting thought is it appearing as that. And in this seeing, compassion blooms. Because how could you harm another when you realize there is no other? How could you cling to what is passing when you see that the passing itself is the dance? The awakening you discover is not a destination. It is a rhythm, a pulse, an eternal now unfolding as all moments. You wake and sleep, forget and remember, again and again, and the universe delights in the game. For that is what life truly is. The cosmic game of hide and seek. You hide from yourself as a human being, so that you may rediscover yourself in wonder. And so the journey continues. Each day, the world invites you to remember. The sound of rain on the window, the weight of your own breath, the look in a friend's eyes. These are the whispers of the infinite reminding you, I am here. I have always been here. And so the journey continues, not forward, but deeper. You no longer chase the horizon, for you have realized there is nowhere to go. The road and the traveler are one. What unfolds now is not a quest for enlightenment, but the gentle art of living in awareness. The mind still thinks, the heart still feels, the body still moves, but there is a space around it all, a vastness that holds every moment without judgment or demand. You wake in the morning, and the first breath feels like the whole universe breathing through you. You pour your coffee, and the rising steam curls upward like a prayer you didn't know you were saying. Even boredom has a strange sweetness to it now, because you see that behind the dullness, life is quietly shimmering. The miracle was never in the extraordinary, it was in the ordinary seen without walls. For the first time you can laugh without reason. Not because something is funny, but because existence itself is so absurdly beautiful. How curious it is that you can hear sound, see color, taste sweetness. How curious that there is even something instead of nothing. You laugh because there's nothing else to do. You have seen through the seriousness of the play. You have realized that God is not a distant king, but the laughter behind all forms. Sometimes the old habits return. The mind worries, the heart tightens, the story of me flickers back on the screen. But now you don't fight it. You simply watch. You see the waves of thought rise and fall on the surface of stillness, and you know they cannot drown you. You are the ocean, pretending to forget itself for the joy of remembering. You let the emotions come and go, the triumphs and tragedies, the praise and blame. all of it part of the music. You notice how life moves in cycles. Every joy carries the seed of sorrow, every sorrow the promise of renewal. To resist one half of the dance is to miss the whole. And so you stop dividing experience into good and bad, success and failure, spiritual and unspiritual. You see that every moment, even the painful ones, are the universe expressing itself as this particular vibration. How could you want it otherwise? The rain is as sacred as the sunlight. In that acceptance, compassion deepens. You begin to look at others and recognize yourself wearing different faces. The angry man, the frightened child, the arrogant woman, they are all you, acting out different scenes. You no longer need to change them, you simply understand them. And that understanding is love. Not sentimental love, not the love that clings or demands, but the quiet recognition that everything belongs. Now and then people ask, how do I stay awakened? And I say you don't. You were never asleep to begin with. The dream of being asleep was part of the dream. The whole idea of progress, of spiritual achievement, is just another disguise of the ego. Awakening is not a state to hold on to. It is the natural state of being when you stop holding on. Just as you don't have to cling to the sky to keep it blue, you don't have to maintain awareness. It's what you already are. So life goes on. You pay bills, wash dishes, fall in love, lose things, make mistakes. But something invisible has shifted. The center of gravity has moved from the mind to the heart, from control to trust. You find yourself living moment to moment, not because you've mastered mindfulness, but because you've forgotten how to live any other way. The present isn't a discipline anymore. It's the only place you exist. And gradually you realize that even awakening was a story. A beautiful, necessary story, but still a story. There never was a separate you who woke up. There was only the play of consciousness, pretending to be lost so that it could enjoy being found. The beginning and the end dissolve into a single timeless now. You see that birth and death are merely doors in the same house, and the one who walks through them was never really born and can never die. In moments of quiet, perhaps at dusk, you can feel it clearly. This mysterious pulse of being that hums through everything. It is the same pulse in the trees, the stars, the rivers, and your own veins. You realize that what you called my life was never yours. It was life itself moving through form after form, expression after expression, endlessly discovering itself. The universe is playing, and you are its laughter. And so you live lightly. You help when you can, you rest when you must, and you no longer need to be anyone special. You have dropped the idea of perfection, for even your flaws are part of the pattern. You don't run from sadness or chase after bliss. You let each wave rise and fall in its time. You see that awakening is not about changing what happens. It's about knowing who it happens to. And who it happens to is not a person, but presence itself. There comes a moment, not dramatic, not thunderous, when even the notion of awakening disappears. The words fall away, the concepts fade, and only silence remains. Not the silence of absence, but the living silence that sings beneath every sound. You understand then that enlightenment was never about gaining wisdom. It was about losing the need to know. You stop trying to describe the indescribable, because every breath already speaks it. From this silence flows a gentle humor. You look back at your life, the striving, the worries, the endless rehearsing of what might happen, and you smile. It was all so necessary, so innocent. The universe had to forget itself to experience itself. It had to play being lost to enjoy being found. Without the dream, there could be no awakening, and without the awakening, the dream would have no meaning. So you bow in a way, not to anyone in particular, but to everything. To the trees, to the wind, to the people rushing through their stories, to the pain and the joy of being alive. You bow because now you see that all of it is sacred, all of it divine, all of it you. And in that bow, in that effortless humility, the circle completes itself. You are no longer trying to become whole, for you see that wholeness has been your nature all along. You are not chasing God, for you realize that God was the one doing the chasing. The searcher and the sought were never two. The wave has remembered the ocean. Life goes on. You age, you change, and one day this body will dissolve back into the soil from which it came. But there will be no tragedy in it, only transformation. The breath that leaves your lungs will become the wind that moves the leaves. The water in your eyes will fall as rain somewhere far away. You were never apart from the cycle, you were the cycle itself. And so the final awakening is not a grand event. It is the simple, peaceful recognition that there is no final awakening. The journey was never about reaching a destination. It was about realizing there was never anywhere to go. What you sought is what you are. What you feared to lose can never be lost. The curtain falls, but the play continues, and behind the curtain, the actor and the audience are one and the same. You sit quietly now, perhaps alone, perhaps among friends, and everything feels exactly right. There is nothing left to add, nothing to remove. The heart beats, the breath flows, and the world turns. And if someone were to ask you what awakening truly is, you might simply smile and say, "It is this."